To you with responsibility to teach biology, I welcome you. My name is KurtWise. I wrote the textbook, tailored the labs, and had these videos made so that you, as a teacher, could have all the materials you need to teach biology with excellence. And I pray you have a great experience doing so. A word, first of all, on the teaching level of the course. I created this course initially for undergraduate education at a Christian college. And it's been taught several years at that particular level very successfully. In fact, at 3 different Christian universities. So I know that this course can be taught effectively at the college level. At the same time, while it was being taught at the college level, it was also being taught in Christian high schools for college credit. And all along, I always had students from the local high school and, in fact, homeschool families attend my class and take it for dual enrollment purposes. Those students, many of those students did extremely well. In fact, arguably the highest scores ever achieved in my courses were, in fact, done by the high school students. So I also know that this course can be taught at a high school level effectively. Now, it'll be a bit of a challenge, but testimonials of my students have indicated that it's well worth the effort. Another word on the issue of how to teach the course. We all understand that different students have different learning styles. There's different means are effective in different ways with different students. But my recommendation is that students read the material in the textbook before watching the videos and then read it again after watching the videos. My experience is that most students get the most out of the material when they do something of that nature. Also, with respect to the labs have been designed to go along with the course, in parallel with the course. I do recommend that in those places where it comments on where the lab ought to be taught or where it's best taught, that you might follow those recommendations, because very often the labs help the students understand material that is presented in the lectures. This is especially true, of course, for the students who are tactile learners, who in fact learn very effectively in the lab. It often helps them enormously to get those things in the lab so they understand those things that are taught in lecture. Also, a note about why I created the course in the first place. The first issue was an issue of content. I went to public school all the way through, secular school all the way through my formal education. Went through public school through high school and went on to the University of Chicago and then to Harvard University. I was always taught from a naturalistic perspective. Other than the obvious contrasts in creation and the age of the earth, I thought that most of that had been taught in the only way that you can teach science. I didn't realize that, in fact, it was not taught in a proper manner, at least for my worldview. It wasn't until I got my first job coming out of my PhD, I got a job teaching at a Christian college. The faculty workshop coming the week before classes began, they presented a very good case for the fact that we as faculty should be teaching our courses, our respective disciplines, from the worldview of the Bible, from a Christian worldview. This was a new concept to me, but it sounded like quite a good one. And of course, we were admonished to do so. So I went about to find the textbooks where people had done that. And much to my chagrin, after looking around a bit, I realized that it wasn't going to be an easy task. There didn't seem to be any obvious examples of textbooks that taught science from a Christian worldview. And this came as quite a shock to me. Christianity has been around for thousands of years, arguably longer than science has been around. Why is it that Christians have not actually embraced or at least taught a Christian worldview of science? This prompted me to follow that up for years of work over the years, over the decades that have followed that initial experience, I have tried to find research that people have done, attempts that people have made at creating a Christian worldview of science, and then working on developing these things myself and experimenting on my students. One thing I observed, one thing I discovered, an exciting discovery actually, was in the work of the Puritans and Jonathan Edwards. I saw people at that time, early in the history of the colonies, our country, where they were struggling to develop a Christian worldview of not just the sciences, but everything. The argument they made was you should start with God, you work through the disciplines really should come out of the very character and nature of God, and then ultimately your behavior and your ethics will flow even from that. That idea forms the foundation of the structure of your text and the course. I begin the course, I begin the text, I begin each chapter with God Himself and His attributes. And then I work through the biological consequences of that characteristic of God, and then end chapters with ethical applications. How is it that we should then live given this information? Also, I discovered along the way an understanding of Romans chapter 1. It struck me, read it many times, but eventually it really struck me hard. If God really did create the physical creation in such a way that He teaches us about His invisible power and Godhead, then in fact we could turn that around in a sense and take the attributes of God and use it to understand the creation, or at least organize our information about the creation. That ultimately led to the organization of the chapters that you have in your book. Why I've got the chapters I have, and the fact that each of the chapters is focusing on an attribute of God. That became the organizational framework upon which the course was built. So I do hope that you learn, that you find this to be an exciting way to teach biology. Sorry. I pray you're able to use this course to in fact teach about God. More important than the biology is, I believe, what you can teach through this course about the Creator of those things that are made. One thing I've observed over the years is students have written testimonials and evaluations of the course where, in fact, they have said such things as, I learned more about God in this course, the science course, than I learned about God in Bible courses. In fact, students even said that at a seminary where I taught. Even though I warned them, please don't do that. It doesn't look good when a science course is not teaching as much as a Bible course at a seminary. But the fact is that I don't think they're quite right. I didn't teach more about God in my course. What I did was I taught the things that they had learned in Bible courses, and I showed how those things actually apply in science. They apply in the world around us. Of all things, science, a field that is often thought to be antagonistic towards Christianity. When students began to realize that the claims of the Bible actually apply to something as arcane as science, they began to believe that these things are really, really, really true. It isn't that they didn't know these things before. It's that they became alive. And I pray that the same thing you'll find to be the case in your class. I hope that you can teach this subject in such a way that your students will learn more about God and the Bible and find that these things actually come alive through that. Another observation, another reason that I, in fact, created this course was a concern that my professors shared while I was in graduate school and actually in undergraduate school. All the way through, my professors made comments about the textbooks that existed in high school and grade school. They were not happy with these textbooks. Now, they weren't talking about Christian textbooks. They were talking about the textbooks in the secular schools, the public schools. Their concerns were twofold. First, there were inaccuracies in those texts. And secondly, the texts were out of date. They were very often teaching science that was 20, 30, even 50 years rejected by the scientific community. Now, the primary reason for this was that most textbooks are in fact written by teachers, not scientists, not practicing scientists. Now there's good reason for that, because very few scientists actually do a good job at communicating to the average person, to the person who's not a scientist. So it makes sense that others should write the text than scientists, but still, it should have been that the text should have been reviewed by scientists to make sure they were accurate and up to date. My own experience has confirmed the observations of my professors, especially in the Christian world, and arguably, hate to say it, but my experience in the Christian world was Christian texts seem to be even more prone to these problems. And in particular, in the issues of creationism. My field is creationism. I do creation research, working with the creation research community. But the textbooks that are produced by Christians very often are very, very out of date on a very rapidly changing field of creation science. They don't seem, again, I understand why, because creation scientists, we typically don't do a very good job at communicating, but it should have been that the texts were in fact reviewed by the creation scientists, kept up to date. So when I designed this course, I worked hard at trying to put into the course the up-to-date and accurate information, had the material reviewed by both theologians and scientists. Now, I understand there's going to be some mistakes in there, and as much as I tried to keep up to date on the creationist research, there's some things that will be changing even as I'm speaking right now, and there's going to be some discoveries that are made even between the time that I produce this material and in fact you use it. But I hope, nonetheless, in spite of that this material is actually the best and most up-to-date material that's available in creationism and in science, again, for your purposes, for you, so that you can do an excellent job in teaching biology.